Before we start, I have a few housekeeping items to cover about the presentation today. First, today's webinar recording will be available upon request, but the presentation will be shared with all participants after the webinar. Next, we'd love to hear from you during today's presentation. Even though all participants will be placed on mute, if you have any questions for us, please feel free to send that via the chat menu. We'll be answering all questions towards the end of the session, but if we don't get time to answer some of your questions today, we'll be sure to follow up by the close of business. With that, let me kick things off by introducing myself. My name is Hira Akhtar. I'm Senior Manager of Customer Solutions here at Resilinc. And I manage the customer success teams across the Americas and Europe, my team and myself being your best advocates and voice into Resilinc. I'd also like to welcome Sandeep Ramachandran, Director of Product Management at Resilinc. And Sandeep is responsible for a portfolio of products at Resilinc, including workflows that we'll talk about today, reports and dashboards, and our AI product. The goal for today's session is really to give you a high-level overview of our new product launch, Resilinc Workflows. We'll go into a light demo, but we'll talk about Resilinc's SCRM ecosystem, what we're shifting to, and give you a perceptive of what our thought process is. We at this point see data plus technology being an integral part of how we expand our capabilities and support you and your teams. And just to reiterate, again, we'll be open to some Q&A at the end. Feel free to post your questions as they come to mind, and we'll put them in the queue and respond towards the end of the hour. So with that, Sandeep, why don't you give us a better understanding of what you mean by Resilinc's supplier management ecosystem?
Sure. Thanks, Kira, for that. And, is my audio okay? Just want to make sure. I think I hear a background noise, but looks like it's fine now. Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Perfect. And thank you, Hira, for the introduction. And welcome all. Good morning, good evening to folks who are joining us from all over the world. I'm very excited to talk about the workflows today and walk through what it is and how you can leverage it to manage your risks much more effectively and streamline the actions that you're taking to manage the risk. And specifically at this time that we are all going through, how can you use or leverage workflows on your day-to-day operations? That's something that I'm going to cover and share details about as I go through the session. There you go. So I want to start by setting up the stage on how the workflows become an integral part of the whole SCRM ecosystem, which allows you to take the data and the insights and thus making you or allowing you to make those informed decisions and turn acting upon it. So in the Resilinc supplier management ecosystem, the foundation, as we all know, is the data which gets pulled in from various sources, such as the different event types that we monitor, the languages, the different data patterns, the data that comes in from the supplier assessments, the impact confirmation from the events, the data you provide, the research we do, etc. And when you consider, this becomes massive volumes of data, which, and then the next obvious question is, how do you identify and prioritize these areas of risk and scenarios that you need to focus on? And this is where the Ask Eva, the Eva, which is the AI engine at Resilinc, uses the cognitive analytics and provides all these different prescriptive recommendations to you, offering any or the possible action plans that you that allows you to build up the desired outcomes. But more importantly, at that point, with your objectives still in sight. So with the data and with the deep analysis that is now available, we want to allow you to take that better informed decisions and at the end of the day, execute much more consistently by leveraging the workflows, which is where the automated workflows, the playbook, the processes, and all that comes into one place, which is what I'm going to go into details in the next couple of slides. Now, with the workflows, the engine that we are talking about, it actually allows you or empowers your teams to run the different processes, your mitigations with much more confidence, and thus creating that sense of transparency around the work that you're doing. And of course, you and your whole organization, which has multiple stakeholders, multiple actions that you're following, the actions that you're executing on a day-to-day basis. Workflows brings in all that transparency into one place, and thus enabling you to be much more successful at the end of the day. So what is workflows? Let's deep dive into it a little more and explore together here. So previously, when we were talking to our customers, we haven't seen, and when we were researching in the market out there, we haven't seen any categories or softwares in the supply chain space that described what Resilinc is able to do, which is, there are a lot of different project management tools out there. There are team collaboration tools that require a lot of manual understanding, extraction of all these volumes of data, and then trying to make a sense of, where are the areas that you need to focus, and what are the actions that you need to do. Everything was much more siloed. Now, with the Resilinc workflows, what it brings is all that information, all that capability into one place, which is your collaboration capabilities, the project management capability, your playbooks can be brought into the picture, your risk policies and criterias, and everything can be brought into one place. And now you can take actions to close any gaps that is out there in your supply chain. And this is best for teams which are in various industries, or companies which are in various industries, which are across regions, which is in various sizes and even different structures. So that's where workflows becomes really, really successful. Now, going a little more details into the key or the core capabilities of workflows, you can now create workflows at various levels that you're interested in. Let me explain what do I mean by level here. If your company is managing risk, or there is an event that has happened which is potentially affecting your supply chain, the event is the level that we are talking about. And within the event, there are now certain partners, parts, or sites that could potentially be affected. And there are certain set of actions that you're going to take to close any gaps or issues or any escalations that's going on. Now, with the workflows, as I was mentioning, you can now create these workflows at levels such as events, at a specific partner or a set of partners, a set of sites, or set of a specific site, or any parts that are associated which might affect your supply chain. And in the demo that I'll be going to in some time, I'll try to cover some of these scenarios so that you can relate to what I mean by creating a workflow at certain levels and so on. The next thing is the visualizations. Again, with massive amounts of data and the different actions and actions that you're taking across the organization with multiple stakeholders, what becomes very important is the visualizations and the analytic views, which allows your company to track and get that visibility of workflows for much more seamless alignment, transparency, and reporting across the organization. And these visualizations that we have within the workflows now allow you to review all the different tasks or any mitigations that you have created by the owners that you have assigned, by the due dates that are upcoming, the priorities that you have set. Some of them might be high priority workflows, some of them might be low. So based on that, you can start reviewing the status as a whole team by the status, activities, and much more. Companies have now going into the playbooks. So companies have different kinds of playbooks and actions associated with it based on the scenarios that you would plan out for your supply chain. For example, it could be a playbook that you're creating and that you've already created for material shortages, or it could be something which is very relevant that's going on at this current situation is force majeures. So how do you create what kind of a playbook? And I'm sure you might have playbooks that has several set of actions and owners who are constantly working to close out any issues and gaps. So with all these playbooks, with the workflows, what you can do is bring in those playbooks that you have in your organization, add it as a part of the workflows, and you can attach documents, your business continuity documents, you can assign your tasks to default owners, and so on and so forth. Again, during the demo, I'll go through some of these examples and you'll be able to get to know exactly what I mean by creating workflows within the system. In any workflows or any tasks that you're assigning to your organization, Collaboration is a very important thing, because you need to make, because there's a lot of information, exchange of information that's going on, exchange of documentation, exchange of data that's happening every day in, day out. So as a result, collaboration becomes a very important aspect here. And through the Resilinc messaging system, which is also available in Resilinc Workflows, you are now able to seamlessly exchange your messages, notes with the different stakeholders, attachments. You can track what kind of activities are being performed, and everything is very seamless through the chat and messaging functionality within Resilinc Workflows. Now, the next thing here is the automations and the integration. So with workflows, you can automate. There are several different automations available. For example, you can receive your notifications for any new tasks assigned, any new workflows that you've created, notifications for any changes that's happening. Let's say there's an activity that's being performed by a set of users. Let's say a few folks are going and changing the different actions for that activity. So you want to be on the know as to what the changes are happening. So the system allows you to create those automations to notify the stakeholders what changes are happening, what are the due dates, and what are the reminders that needs to be sent out before even the task is due. So these are some of the automations which are available, and this is a constantly evolving area for us. And the main goal in this case is to eliminate any of the grunt work that you may have to go through on a daily basis. Rather, we want you to focus more on the stuff that really requires your talent, and any of the other things we would want to take care through the automations. We also support the API integrations with your ERP systems or internal systems, and connect everything in that one integrated workspace. So if you have actions and workflows that you have created, or any risk registers that you have created in your internal systems today, we can always bring that in, and their APIs and all those integrations are available, so that at the end of the day, there are less data interventions, less human errors, and it's a single source of truth within the Resilinc workflow system. Another exciting area is the predictive recommendations, or the EVA engine that we were talking about, which is all about, with this massive amounts of data, we're trying to go into the deep insights and deep pockets of data, and trying to connect the dots and bringing those recommendations to you, saying that, hey, this supplier, because of these many issues, I think this is what you need to take a focus on first, rather than some of the others. And hey, this is the action that you want to take, is initiate a workflow. So there is a whole process around it to close any gaps that you have. So the EVA recommendations that's being built within the system allows you to get those nuggets of information, which becomes very important, which is, not very visible on a day-to-day basis using our eyes, but we take that out and give it to you so that you can take quick actions on those which otherwise might have lost in the day-to-day actions. Now, with that said, again, as I would go into the demo, this will get more and more seamless for you to understand what I've explained so far. So in this slide, I'm just going to quickly talk about what are the key functionalities or feature set that is available within workflows. So some of them we have already covered, but I'll quickly run down what those are. So as we talked about, you can initiate your workflows at any of the levels, right from partners, sites, parts, and events. You can assign your actions and work to the different team members or a set of stakeholders, set start date, end date, and priorities for all of these actions that you have created. Document upload and management is very important. So seamless exchange of your documents, as well as exchange messages and collaborate with your stakeholders in this case. Email alerts and notifications are a key part of it. Activity history and change logs. So whenever there are changes being made, or someone making changes in the activities, you want to make sure those are recorded for your future references. So activity history and change logs are available. Global filters. This is another key thing, which is, let's say this is an example, sample organization that we are talking about, has different business units, product families, product lines, and products that they are all working together. All the teams are collaborating in this one platform. In that case, you might have different workflows, different actions being assigned to different entities within this organization. Now, with the global filters, you're able to exactly point from the top down, what are the progresses, where are the bottlenecks in the actions being taken, and you have that visibility clearly pointed out through the global filtering. And again, I'll walk through that in a second in the demo. Dashboards, analytics dashboard, again, I'll be covering that as well, but it gives you a quick indication of what are the key areas to focus, and there's some very visual charts and tables that we have that I'll go through. Stock playbooks we did talk about, and the one last thing, but not the least, is the bulk operations, which is, there are a lot of actions being taken on a day-to-day basis. What if you want to perform bulk operations? Like, I want to change the status of let's say 5 of the projects from a let's say assessing state all of a sudden to a closed state based on the actions taken. So you have these bulk operation capabilities within the system, so that on a single click or a couple of clicks you could make the updates on your workflows as you go. This slide talks a little bit about, I'm going to quickly go over this, but this slide talks about the structure or the backbone of the workflow management and how it is structured in the system. So it's pretty much broken down into a different level. So five different levels here. It starts off at the high level, which is now you start off by creating a project for any task, any actions that you want to take. So it's a project that you would initiate, and the project can be initiated at different levels. So at a partner level, at a part level, at a site level, or an event level. Once you decide, in this example, I'm just going to go and focus on the partner level workflow that I'm creating here. So we have created the project. A partner level is what I'm selecting, which would have the list of all your partners where the actions need to be taken. Here at level 3, this is where a playbook can be initiated or launched and the actions associated with it. And at the same time, for each of the actions or the playbook that you have, you can assign stakeholders, you can attach documentations, etc. Level 4 is where, from the action or the playbook standpoint, this is where there would be sub-actions or issues that go under it. So there could be multiple actions that go under a playbook. And for each of those actions, you could have specific stakeholders, and you could have that multi-channel communication. So let's say in one action, there are a few people who are assigned who are closely working. So you could seamlessly have messaging going on with all the stakeholders in that case. The last level is where you could, have additional actions which go even into the details of it. And once you finish off a project or a set of actions, then you can create a parallel workflow which is tied back to this exact project that we just talked about. So again, in a nutshell, what this gives you is a structure of how it starts all the way from creating a project. For example, since we are going through the situation of COVID-19, so you could say COVID-19 is a project, and then you would assign all the partners affected or potentially affected in the different regions, the sites, or the event. If it's event-based, it could be based on a trigger from Resilinc Event Watch and all the suppliers in it. And then you would launch a playbook, which is the COVID or pandemic playbook that you've created, assign the stakeholders in it and the actions associated with it. And again, I'll go through this exact example in a second. Before I get into the demo, I wanted to just call out and recognize one of the pioneers in this space. So WD, as we all know, is a pioneer in the supply chain risk management space, and they are one of the companies who, in fact, did initiate or take up the workflow management system, and they have actually launched it across their organization, across the supply chain commodity organization to manage the current situation that they're all going through, which is for their COVID operations and the impacts to the supply chain. They're actively using the workflows to manage it much more effectively and seamlessly. So I wanted to just say that, this is exactly what we have done here. Is we have taken all the customer feedback, what the requirements that we have heard from the industry, and we have built it. And this is built for our customers so that they could use it and make use of situations. Exactly what we're going through. Now, let me switch gears here and go into the demo. So, and this slide pretty much talks about what we just covered. This is just the text version of it, but you could just go through it quickly while I pull up the demo org. Okay, and all these slides that I went through is available after the session. So again, I will make sure you can go through that in detail as we said it. So let me walk you through the workflow in the system itself. So as you're all familiar, this is the homepage. Again, this is a test environment that we are working on, which is called as Mars Technology. So in this case, if you are company Acme, you would see it as company Acme at the top. There are two ways by which you can initiate or get to the workflow page. One is if you are in a specific a partner page, or let's say if you're looking at a partner called Acme, or not Acme, but let's say 3M is one of your suppliers. If you are in 3M and if you know that this is a supplier which needs certain actions, or you need to mitigate some of the risk associated with that supplier, the initiate workflow is available within that same page itself. Similarly, if you are in a part page, or if you are in a specific site that you're looking at, and since you're familiar with the Resilinc system, you know, for each and every site, each and every part, each and every partner, there is a dedicated profile page, and from the profile page, you can initiate a workflow, which takes us to the workflow instance. The other side, the other thing is what I'm going through right now, which is on the left-hand side menu, you might have noticed there is a new icon way at the bottom, which is called as workflows. And as I hover over it, you're going to see there are two different submenus that you can click on. The first one is the Workflow Center, which is where the day-to-day operations and where the funds happens, and the Analytics, which is more of the visualizations and where you're going to see the progress, etc. Now, if I click on the Workflow Center here, it opens up into this Workflow Center that you're seeing here, and I'll try to explain some of the key areas to focus here, and also go through a sample of a workflow as well. Now, at the top, what you see first is a filter. But this is the global filter that we're talking about. And let's say in the sample organization, which is a sample organization that's Mars Technology, has the hierarchy structure, which goes all the way from Mars Technology to different business units, different product families, product lines, products, and all the way to different suppliers that add up to all these products or product families, etc. Now, as you can see, the global filters, as I click on the business unit, you can see these are the different business units that have been configured in the system who are managing the risk in Resilinc system. So you can see from pharma to networking, again, this is a sample org, but you can see the different business units. If I select on one of the business unit, you can see the product families start to tailor into specific business units. And as I go into certain examples like product family, it's a smaller subset of business unit items in it. And it keeps going all the way up to a partner, which is, you can see the list of all the partners that are available in the system if you decide to initiate a workflow for that partner. And the benefit of the workflow is that, let's say you are a part of a business unit, there's another a peer of yours who is a part of a different business unit. You can create individual workflows based on your entity, your business unit, and then you can manage it separately as well. And of course, if you want to track as a whole company, let's say your center of excellence team would like to track the workflows from the top down, you can just come back and view it right from the top all the way up to the bottom, which is at a partner level. Now, applying the filters is very simple, where you could select a couple of business units, and you could see that all the suppliers, all your products, etc., start to change. You can see that there is a small pause there, but you can see the partners get automatically filtered for the business units that I've selected, and these are the ones that I'm responsible. Thus, I can initiate a workflow for them. Once you set your preferences, you would then click on your save selection. What happens is next time you log out and log in back, you don't have to anymore work on that filters. Rather, you have set it, and then everything else is based on the preferences that you have set. Once you set your filters, the bottom section is where the real workflow happens. So the first thing that I want to highlight here are the 4 levels that we talked about. So here you can see that there's partners, events, parts, and sites. These are the 4 levels at which you can create. And let me give you one example. A partner level workflow. That means here you can search for any different partners that you have in your business unit that you've selected, and you can select one partner or multiple partners and initiate a workflow for them. If it is an event, it would be an event that the event watch team might have notified you. You can search for the event, and then you can initiate a workflow for that specific event. And again, please note, you can also initiate the workflow from the event detail page. So in the event detail page, there's a button called initiate workflow, which directly takes that event and takes you to the workflow, and it takes you directly to the events tab. Now, I'll get to the projects in a second after I explain some of the items here. But within the partners, let me explain quickly what this table is all about. So once you create the workflow, this is where the created workflows would come and sit. So if it's the first time that you're using, you're going to see that as empty because there are no workflows created. But in this case, I've created a couple of examples of workflows. So you can see that this is my partner column, the first one, and you can see that there are a couple of workflows, in fact, 2 workflows that I've created for a packaging solution, which is the supplier, automotive Inc., Brunel, and these are some of the examples that I've created. And then there are columns like what is the status of my workflows, the priority, what are the categories that these suppliers fall under, what is the revenue at risk, the workflow actions that I've taken, who are the owners, start date, end date, and so on. Before I get into the example of creating a workflow, let me show you what a playbook is as well, and then I'll tie it to creating a workflow. So there are a few buttons here at the top. Some of them are, so it is manage playbooks. You can clone a workflow. You can bulk override. So the last two I'll get to in a second, but let's start with the manage playbook. So when I click on manage playbook, what you're going to see is a set of stock playbooks that Resilinc has already created. And and you also have an opportunity to create workflows or create playbooks that are organization specific, which is in your case, you were talking about shortages or force majeure. So if you have those playbooks, you can quickly bring that in, configure them in the system, and make it ready for launching it through the workflows. So in this example, so here what I've done is I've created one recently, which is actually the COVID-19. Again, it's just a sample playbook that I created. But here you can see that I created this workflow. And by the way, create workflow is just by clicking on the plus icon at the top. When you click on it, you would get an exact screen where you can type in your playbook name, the description, add any attachments, etc. Now, in this case, I added COVID-19 as my playbook name. In the playbook actions, you can see that these are the 2 actions that I've configured. And if I were to just expand and make it a little more readable, you can see the first action that I have is review the impact. And of course, you can also rearrange the order of it, but you can see the first action here is review the impact country and suppliers in the region. And there's some description that you can add. Of course, anytime you can go and double click on these and change the description so that it's as easy as it can get. And for each of these actions, you can also assign default owners. So we are bringing in that automation where, let's say each time you initiate or launch a playbook, these are the standard tasks or actions that user or the company has to go through. In that case, exactly these are the folks who have to, who are the owners for that action, then you can configure them here at an action level. So in this case, I have Daniel Williams, who is one of the users in the company, and he is responsible to take action whenever I launch this playbook. Also note that along with configuring the playbook, you also have the ability to attach documents. So often case, we see that whenever someone is going through a crisis or an event or managing the risk, you oftentimes have to pull up certain documents. Maybe it's the business continuity document that you want to quickly that the user wants to quickly pull up, and you need to read through the different sections and the actions that are listed there. So instead of having this in multiple different systems and in your SharePoint and your local drive, rather here, what we are doing is we are bringing in, you have the ability to bring all your documents in one place under that playbook, so that as soon as you launch it for that user, he's available, or he or she is available it is available for that user to quickly launch or read through the document, which they have to which they have to go through the SharePoint. So here, looks like there's one attachment that I have. So if I click on the attachment, it'll show that this is a business continuity document that I've attached. And if there are more documents that you want to attach to this playbook, of course, you can go in, select them, and attach it to the playbook. Once you are done with configuring your playbooks, you would save all the changes, which means the next time you launch a workflow, it is available for consumption. So let me close this. And again, as you can see at the bottom, at the top, you can see that these are some of the standard playbooks that we have created. For example, in this case, it's find an alternate source, and there are 5 different workflow actions associated with it, which starts all the way from approving going through the finance sign off to supplier agreements to AVL updates and so on. Now let's go through the example of creating a workflow. And in this case, let's start with a partner. So I know that there is a partner which has a high risk. I just recently came across maybe the supplier letting you know that they are declaring a force majeure. So what could you do? As soon as you hear that, you would come here. Maybe it is through the event. You could do that, or if you're just coming here directly and initiating from the partners, you would click on create. Once you create, click on create. The first set of fields at the top is the workflow fields. So, for example, let's say I'm going to put this as force majeure as my project name, and you want a set of workflows that you want to launch as a part of it. For this example, let me just say that I want to initiate the playbook that I just created. Let's say COVID-19 is the playbook. Again, if you have different playbooks, you can leverage that. I would click on that. As soon as I clicked on it, these are the 2 actions that we have added. If you want to add additional actions, you can just select any of them. Or if you want to create a completely new one, you could just type in, let's say, call supplier. Once you do that, you click on the plus, which means that action has been added, which is the 3rd action added to this one. And one thing you might have noticed is as soon as I initiated the workflow, the default owner initiated the actions. The default owners are starting to show up. So in this case, if you recall, Daniel was assigned to one of the actions. So that's why Daniel is added as an owner by default. Now, if you want to create a workflow, one each for each action. So in this case, you have 2 options. One, you just want to create one workflow which has both these actions embedded in it. Or you could have 2 separate actions, one for review BCP, one for review the impact country, and both these actions have different owners. So if you want to have different workflows, then for each of the actions, you would then click on this checkbox. If not, it'll be one workflow created which has both the actions that the user is, which Daniel is responsible to close. So let's say in this example, I've checked the box, which means it's going to create 2 different workflows, one for each action. Then I would set the start date, end date. Let's say I'm going to start the date. I don't want to delay that much. Let's say I'm going to start today. And the end date is, let's say, by 16th. I want both of these actions to be completed. You can set your priorities, which is based on the project. So let's say this is a high impact project for me. So I'm going to set the status and then set the priority. The status is, again, you have a different set of statuses here. And then there are some optional fields like what is the projected cost, budget, and the actual cost for this whole workflow to be managed. Now, the second part is where the supplier needs to be selected. If you have a bunch of suppliers, you can select a bunch of suppliers. Or if you have a specific supplier, you can select one. Or let's say in this case, I'm going to search for a supplier called Able Electronics, which is the supplier who just confirmed that they are impacted and they have declared a force majeure. So in this case, I'm going to select Able Electronics. So that supplier is not shown. So I would select that supplier. And again, if you have a bunch of suppliers, you could just search for them and add them as you go. And let's quickly go through some of the columns that you see on the right here. So here it starts to break down by the categories that these suppliers fall under, what's the revenue at risk based on the product revenue and going all the way up to the parts. And if I keep going to the right, you can start seeing the different risk factors that have been deployed in the system. So in this example, in this customer, which is Mars Technology, you can see different risk factors such as BCP, cyber, financial, geopolitical, macroeconomic. These are different kinds of risk factors that have been added, and there's a risk score associated with it. Now, you can build criteria for searching your suppliers as well. Let's say a good example would be, I want to search for all the suppliers, and in a second, I'll come back to Able Electronics. So I'm going to select all the suppliers and show you this workflow. So let's say I want to see all my suppliers which have a recovery risk of greater than a 7. So it starts to filter. So it's now building out the criteria for you. So second criteria that I want within that is I want to see all the suppliers which have a really bad financial score. So I would go to the financial column here, select, okay, this is greater than a 7. And all of you who have used the Resilinc system, you know that the scale for the risk score is between 1 to 10, 10 being the worst risk, 1 being the good one. So here I've configured a combination or criteria, which is bad financials and bad recovery time. And as I put in my criteria, you can see that Able Electronics is the supplier that did get filtered. And in this case, what I'm going to do is select the supplier and then launch the workflow for that. Now, once I select the workflows, you have an opportunity to also add specific parts and sites for the supplier as well. So in case you want to add a specific site or a specific part, you have an opportunity to click on the add sites and parts for Able Electronics. So in one workflow, you can add the supplier, the parts associated with it, and the sites associated all in one go. Now, once I've done my selections, I would then click on submit. So what this does is it now brings you back to the base table, which has the list of all the suppliers. So here you can see that Able Electronics is the one that we just created, and there are 2 workflows, one for each action. So you can see that the first action is for reviewing the BCPs for the impacted suppliers. The other one is the reviewing the impacted country. Let's say in one of the examples, I want to change the owner. I want to add, or in fact, add another owner. Let's say I'm going to add myself to it. So I'm going to add it. And as I said, it is so simple that you can just double click on some of these fields and you can make the changes on the go. You don't have to go through a wizard kind of an approach. Rather, you can quickly double click and make the updates. So here you can see that I've added myself, and you can see Daniel. Daniel is the other owner. Let's say for this example, I want to start the activity just after the other one getting completed, which is I'm going to say 17th is the start date, and then in this case I'm going to say the end date is the 20th. Now, once I make all the changes, let's say if you want one more thing, if you want to make or if you want to add an additional workflow action, you can of course you can click on one of these and then even add another workflow within this. But if not, if you want to keep it simple, you can just keep it as is. Once you have done all these changes, I would then click on create, and oh, my bad. As soon as my bad, it should be save. So as soon as I make all the changes, I click on save. What just happened is successfully the workflow is created, and 2 things happen here. One is you can now start working on your workflows and get into the actions. The other thing is there is an email trigger which you can configure, which means if you want to get emails and the owners be notified whenever there are workflows created, you have a setting which allows you to enable that. So once you enable it, as soon as a workflow is created, the owners get notified saying that, hey, in this case, Daniel Sandeep has created a workflow for you with this is the action, these are the actions, this is the due date. Please go and take a look at the workflows. So this is a trigger for folks who are not using the Resilinc, who are not currently using the Resilinc system. They would get the email. As soon as they get it, they would navigate to the workflows and they would start working on it. Now, within the workflows, there are a couple of things. That you could do. Which is, and you can see one more item here in this workflow. We had actually added an attachment, and that attachment is starting to show. So I didn't add anything, but if you wanted to look at what the attachment is, in this case, Daniel could click on the attachment, and then Daniel could download it and start reviewing the document, which is a part of the exercise that he has to go through always. Now, if you want to start messaging the different stakeholders within the organization or within the workflow, you have the option as well. So in this case, so let me see. So in this case, you click on the messaging so that you can start messaging Daniel, or you can message. You can create some notes as well for you. For example, in this case, Daniel could send a couple of messages to me, and then I would be able to see that there are 100 messages, and thus I would be able to see what kind of actions are taken by Daniel in this example. And I think looks like Daniel for a previous workflow that I did create, there is an 100 message. So you can see that there's a red dot. And as I expand the workflow itself, I click on it, I can start seeing that Daniel did say, hey, have you received the financials? So this looks like a message that Daniel did send to me, which I can definitely respond to checking on the state, checking on it. And once you send it, Daniel gets the notification as well saying that there's an 100 message. So there's that level of transparency available for you as you manage the project. A couple more things that you could do here. Let's say, as you go through the workflow, you could change the status. Let's say, all of a sudden the status is changed from a high to a medium. You could make the update. Let's say the status of one of the projects is changing from it's currently in the new status. You could change it to assessing, and then you could save the change so that that's the latest. Looks like there was some error, but that's the latest status that you're looking at. Now, all that we talked about is now in the context of partners, and exactly a similar approach can be taken at the parts or a site. The only difference is when you're at the part tab, you're going to see the list of all your parts. When you click on the create, when you're at the sites tab, you're going to see the list of all your sites. A good example of a site level workflow would be, let's say there's a business continuity gap for one of the sites. You want to start putting a plan to rectify the gap. So you would create a workflow for that specific site and assign owners and due dates, etc., and then you can go forward with the work. Now, one or two last things before I go to the analytics dashboard is if it is a specific event. So here you can see that there are two events for which I've created a workflow. But if I click on create here, it's going to start listing all the events that are there in your event for room. So let's say in this example, I'm going to search for something called as 58th update. So I want to create a workflow for the 58th update for the COVID-19 notification that we had sent you. So if I click on the workflow, it's now going to start to show you all the partner sites and parts that are affected or potentially affected and notified you about. So you can see the list of all the partners, sites, and parts in these tabs. And what would even help you even further is quickly identify which are the critical ones that you need to take an action on. So we have brought in the impact status and the downtime columns as well. So let's say I want to start by looking at the suppliers who have confirmed an impact. I would click on confirmed. So you can see that these are all the suppliers who have confirmed an impact with a downtime of all the way up to 52 weeks. So in this case, nothing different. I would select the set of suppliers, add the different details, launch the playbook, which is the COVID-19 playbook, and everything remains the same, and I would launch the workflow accordingly. Now, I did say that I will let you know what is how you could clone and how you could also bulk override. So let's say in this example, I want to select both of these workflows and change the status to let's say status and priority to medium and status to hold, let's say. Then I would select, these are the two that I just selected. And once I update those two selected ones, all of a sudden the updates get reflected, which means the priority is now medium and hold. And the application is when there are a lot of workflows that you've created and you've reviewed everything and you want to make the changes in the statuses, etc., you can do that. Let's say if you want to create a clone of the exact workflow, only difference is you want to change an action. You could just select the specific workflow that you want to clone, and then you click on the clone button. And now you can see that the clone, that exact workflow that I just selected has been cloned. I can make updates to the owners. Let's say now I want someone else, John Bowit, to be the owner rather than Daniel and Sandeep. You would then make the update and then save it so that John is now a part of this project that we are talking about. And once you save it, again, email gets triggered to John and he gets notified, hey, there's an action. Now let's quickly look at projects here. So I'm going to discard the changes here. Now the project, what is projects tab? Now we created, we said, COVID-19 could be one of the project names. And let's say there are several different actions or suppliers that are associated with that project. Now, what you will be able to see is review all those actions or all those workflows which are tagged under that project in this project tab. So here you can see that workflow was one of them that I created. Let me look at one example which has a few more actions here. So it looks like supplier financial assessment. This is a good example which has 5 different workflows that have been created. So it starts with, and looks like there are a couple of suppliers I've selected. As I close the different workflows associated with it. So you can see the progress also starts to get completed. So in this case, the current status is new. And once I click on closed and save it, the status now gets, the progress now all of a sudden gets updated to 40% or 60% because there are 3 items that are closed out of the 5, which needs to be completed for the project itself to be closed. So in a nutshell, what this does is the partner from the workflows that you have initiated from the partners, events, parts, and sites, it's all brought into the projects tab, and then you can review it from the parent level, which is at the project level, what are the workflows, and start managing it one by one. Now, this is the workflow where this is the operations place where, it's, everyone comes in, updates, send messages. But if you are in an executive meeting, if you have all your executives in the room, you're reviewing through all the actions and the actions being taken for a project, let's say in this case, COVID-19, what are the actions, who are the owners, what's pending, what are the bottlenecks, etc. That's where you go to the analytics dashboard. As I said, you can navigate from the workflows all the way up to the analytics tab. But in the analytics tab, and once you click on it, this is what you see. The analytics tab is a set of visualizations that you have. For example, you have the breakdown of all the different workflows that are open right now, not just not counting the closed, but the open workflows. And then you have a breakdown of all the workflows by the status, which is mitigating, assessing, closed, new, by the priority that you just defined. Who are the owners who are responsible to close all these actions? So for example, you can see Sandeep, which is me. I have 2 which are in the assessing status, 2 which I've already closed, 1 in the mitigating status, and 2 which I've not taken action, or 3 in which I've not taken action yet, which is in the new status. And if I want to just look at the ones which are not closed, I would click on the closed here. So, the closed gets removed from the chart. So it's very interactive in that way. The other thing is the due date. So here you can see what are the workflows that are due or which are upcoming. So you can see in this example, there's one which is already past due. So if you're in a meeting, you can quickly hone into that specific past due item and see what kind of actions need to be taken from the group. How many are there due in the next 30 days, 60 days, and beyond that. At the bottom, and I'll get to the two cards here in a second, but at the bottom, you have the projects tab, the projects table here as well. So all the workflows that you have access to or that you have created in your organization, you can quickly look at it and you can even make the changes here. So let's say in this case, the pandemic project that I created, one is currently in the assessing status. Let's say I'm going to change the status to hold. So I would change it and update it so that, as I go during that meeting with the executives, you can, if you wish to update it, you can do that. You can see that the status is now hold. Now going back to these 2 cards, I'll start with the activity. So any changes in the workflows, we want it to be captured, and there are activity logs, and this is one of the places where you can see that for this project, I have actually changed the status from hold to assessing, and then you can see for the different tasks and different actions that I've taken can be easily searched as well. So, oops. Here, let's say I'm going to see all the cases where I've added an attachment. So if I search for it, you can see someone has removed an attachment, added an attachment. So it's a kind of a tracker for you to see what changes. Now, another very important thing is when I log into the system, I want to first see what are the actions that are associated to me and where I need to take the action in the first place. I know there are a lot of actions out there or workflows that are out there, which my team members are taking, but which are the ones that I need to take an action on. So that's where the My Workflows card is. So here it gives you a quick summary of what your actions are. This is at a user level, which is in this case, Sandeep. So there are 6 workflows that there are 6 workflows that have been assigned to me. There is 100 message that that is available that we just went through. So it looks like there are a few more 100 messages. Now, out of the 6 workflows, you can now start looking at what are those workflows and when is it past due, etc. So the first thing that you see here is one of the past due items is actually I'm responsible for it, and looks like the workflow was created for an earthquake, and these are the this the project name itself is an earthquake project name, so magnitude 5.7 earthquake. The actions, you can see the different actions that I'm responsible for, and the due date in this case is April 3rd. So which means I'm already due and it's actually past due by 4 days, 4 or 5 days. Now, if I want to take an action there are two things possible here. I could look at what the workflow itself is. So if that's the case, I would click on this. What it does is the table beneath gets updated for that specific workflow. And you can see that it's also highlighted by a red color, which actually indicates that this workflow is past due. So if you have hundreds of workflows, wherever you see a red row, that indicates that there are past due. Those are past due workflows for you. So in this case, let's say I'm going to I can change the status of it. For example, I'm saying all the updates have been made. I've gone through all the actions. I can change the status as closed and then save it, which means next time I come in, I'm not going to see the past due in this card. Then you can see the other things like due soon, so which is upcoming in the next couple of weeks, and then which is further out in the next a month or so. You can see all those tasks one below the other. Let's say you have gone through, let's say, these two tasks, and if you want to just close it as you go, so you could then click on, you could just click on the checkbox that you have here, which is called as mark as closed. So on the go, you could just click on it and click on save, which means you have closed your workflows. You don't have to go to the table, now update it. So we're trying to reduce that redundancy or the number of clicks in this case. So I think that pretty much sums up what I wanted to cover today. But to quickly run down or give you a summary of what we just went through, workflows is very critical, or could be very critical or helpful at times when you have multiple team members, stakeholders, which are all over the world working to close out different actions and different exchange of information. So you could create your workflows at different levels that we talked about, from partners all the way up to events, which is more of a reactive all the way to a proactive standpoint. When you create your workflows, multiple actions can be added, as different owners can be assigned. You can track the progress of all your workflows. You can close the workflows. You can change the priority and the statuses of your workflows. People get notified as soon as the workflow has been initiated, as well as when the changes are made. If I change the status as closed, the owners would also get notified. Let's say I closed it. So Daniel, in this case, would get notified saying that Sandeep has closed this workflow, so that you can start your other work, which needs to be initiated. Activity logs, you have your global filters here as well, which is if you are in an executive meeting, you want to see for a specific business units, or what are the open workflows that are out there, then you would apply your filters, you save your filters, and you could see see the progress based on what's happening in that business unit. So I think with that said, I just wanted to wrap up the demo side of it and let you know that this is available to all of you to start consuming. And Hira, I think this is a good point for you to jump in here and even start looking at some of the questions that we have. I know we have just 5 minutes here, but we could maybe go through some of the questions that's out there.
Thank you, Sandeep. Yes, thank you for the insightful presentation. We do have a couple of questions, and I know we don't have too much time to go over all of them, but we will definitely reach out and respond to your questions by the end of day today. Sandeep, I think we also have a final slide where we can share kind of how our customers can get started and start the onboarding. So I just wanted, I'll go ahead and cover this. And that was one of the questions that came into on how people can get started and how complex is kind of the onboarding. So we wanted to share with you. We know it's an important time right now. We understand that many of you are working on your mitigation efforts with the current outbreak. And we wanted to extend the Resilinc workflows to all our client base and make this available for you, free of all costs until July 1st. So the way you will sign up is through the link that's on the screen, but for easy access, we've also added this to the top right section of your home screen in the What's New section. So this link is there too. When you go ahead and click and sign up, your instance should be activated within 24 hours. And the customer success team has put together also quick training tutorial videos, and we'll also offer kind of the one-on-one sessions to train you and your teams to make sure you guys are up and running and able to utilize the workflows. So with that, Sandeep, I do have some questions on the product side that I wanted you to take. So first being, who receives the email notification when a workflow is created? And can it be switched on or off? So is there control for the user to choose, kind of configure those notifications?
Sure. So the once you create the workflow, it is the owners who receive the notification. So let's say in this example that I showed, Sandeep and let's say Sandeep and Daniel are the owners. So these are the two people who would get notified. And in the settings, there is a settings page where you can disable or enable your notification. So by default, we have switched it off. So if you decide to receive the notifications, which also includes any activity changes, let's say I go and change the status from new to assessing, or change the priority from high to low, etc. That would also be a trigger an email, but not everything at once. But it's a batched email that you get after a few hours. But you have that facility in the notification in the settings page where you can enable and disable, and this is at a user level, which means if you as a user would like to get, whereas another person doesn't like to get any emails, they could switch it off, whereas you can switch it on.
Great, thanks, Sandeep. And maybe we'll just do one more before we wrap up today. So question is, can I launch a workflow from a part profile dashboard?
Yeah, so we couldn't get to the part level workflow today, but the answer is yes, which is if you go to the part level workflow, the exact process is what you would follow, which is you're going to get a list of all your parts that you have in the system. You could assign your criterias within the pop-up that I showed, which is the create pop-up, or you could, if you know exactly what the part number is, you could search for it, or if you have the description, you can search for the description and nail down to that exact part, and then initiate the workflow from there.
Great, thank you, Sandeep. So I know we're right at the top of the hour, so we really wanted to thank all of you for taking the time out to attend today's session. We understand that these are busy times and really hope that the Workflow Center can be used as a part of the solution to support you and your teams with your mitigation efforts. So thank you once again. From all of us at Resilinc, we wish you health and safety and look forward to connecting soon, responding to your questions by the close of business today. Thank you all. Have a great day.